Today I'm going to be talking about someone who's often underappreciated and overlooked in American history. This is someone that I think could have and should have been the president. Today I'm going to be talking about William H. Seward. William Seward was born in Florida, New York on May 16, 1801. He attended Union College and studied law before being admitted to the bar in 1822. Seward was a successful lawyer, but his political career took off in 1830 when he was elected to the New York State Senate. He eventually found himself as a leading member of the Whig Party, but withdrew from politics after being defeated in a run for governor of New York in 1834. During his time in office, he focused on prison reform, infrastructure improvements, and improving the state's education system. Being a staunch abolitionist, he would come to be a controversial governor. Several years later, in 1844, he would be asked by members of the Liberty Party to run for president, but he denied the offer, instead supporting the Whig Party's nominee, Henry Clay. He was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1849 and remained an abolitionist, criticizing measures such as the Fugitive Slave Law. After the dissolution of the Whig Party in 1854, Seward joined the increasingly popular Republican Party. He hoped to win the Republican nomination for president in the election of 1860, but found that he would struggle to gain the support that he needed in the party. The nomination instead went to the lawyer and congressman from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln chose Hannibal Hamlin, a Republican from Maine, to be his vice president. He was able to win the four-way presidential election and became the 16th president of the United States. Lincoln's success was also a turning point in Seward's career, as he nominated Seward to the position of Secretary of State. Lincoln and Seward soon formed a close relationship, and Seward became Lincoln's right-hand man. William Seward proved to be influential and important during the Civil War, and was one of Lincoln's top advisors. He managed international affairs during the conflict, and worked to prevent Europe from getting involved in the war. He frequently dealt with the French Emperor Napoleon III, and negotiated the Lyon-Seward Treaty of 1862, which helped hinder the Atlantic slave trade by giving the U.S. and British navies the right to search any ships that might be carrying African slaves. President Lincoln ran for re-election in 1864, this time with Andrew Johnson on the ticket. Lincoln won re-election, and Andrew Johnson, a deeply conservative Democrat, became the 16th Vice President of the United States. However, the course of Seward's life and that of the United States would change drastically on April 14, 1865. Less than 2 weeks after the Confederate States of America surrendered, Abraham Lincoln was shot in the head, and Seward was stabbed multiple times. Although Seward survived the attack, the president died a day later on April 15th. The assassination attempts were soon discovered to be part of a larger plot organized by John Wilkes Booth to kill Lincoln, Seward, and Vice President Johnson, though the attack on Johnson never went through. Had the plot gone through, the three highest positions in the U.S. government, the President, Vice President, and Secretary of State, would have been wiped out, leaving the government in shambles. Johnson became president immediately, on April 15, 1865, and kept Seward on as the Secretary of State. It was during this time that Seward would make the most infamous political move of his career, purchasing Alaska from the Russians in 1867. He was able to gain the territory for $7.2 million, or about $130 million in today's money, for the Russians were deeply in debt after fighting the Crimean War. The deal was meant to take place several years earlier, but was pushed back due to the American Civil War. Seward, with permission from President Johnson and Congress, purchased the territory on October 18, 1867, in a move that will forever be known as Seward's Folly, or Seward's Icebox, as many at the time thought it to be a terrible purchase. However, Alaska soon proved to be more than just a desolate wasteland of ice when gold and oil were later discovered. Over the course of 150 years, hundreds of thousands of Americans immigrated to Alaska, and today the purchase of the state is considered to be one of the greatest investments in United States history, as the state generates tens of billions of dollars every year. Seward eventually died on October 10, 1872, at the age of 71. He lived a long life as a politician and lawyer, and remains one of the most influential secretaries of state in United States history. However, it's clear from Seward's life that he had the potential and opportunity to be able to accomplish much more. I've always wondered how the history of the United States would change if Seward had been a president. Although Seward could have ran for president in 1844 and tried in 1860, Let's imagine that Seward had become president on April 15th, 1865, following the death of President Lincoln. This could have happened if Lincoln had changed his vice president from Hamlin to Seward, or if Johnson had died during the assassination plot on April 14th, 1865. I'm posing this scenario because when Andrew Johnson was sworn in as president, he would come to lead a disastrous presidential term that would divide the nation and go down as one of the worst presidents in United States history. As president, Johnson spent much of his time undoing a lot of the foundations for Reconstruction that Lincoln put into place before his death, and fought against Congress, becoming the first president to be impeached. Johnson, after narrowly avoiding indictment in 1868, continued to divide the nation following the end of the Civil War, and his policies and attitudes allowed for the introduction of Jim Crow laws after the ratification of the 13th Amendment. You may be wondering why Lincoln would choose Johnson as his vice president, and this was a political move in an effort to unite the Northern Republicans and Southern Democrats during the turmoil of the Civil War. If William Seward had been president at this time instead of Johnson, the course of United States history would be altered significantly. Seward was a critic of slavery, a promoter of reform, and a progressive thinker. With his leadership during Reconstruction, it's plausible to assume that the effects of Jim Crow could have differed immensely, but instead the country was led along a dark path of racism, strife, and discrimination that would remain in the country for over a century and a half later.